Welcome today to our Insights Chat with me, Jolene, from the Marketing Department at Eiffel Corp. Today we've got two guests with us and we're going to talk a bit about SIS and I will introduce our topic a bit more. I first want to just say welcome to Christo and Nico. Christowitz and Nico Jooste, if you could maybe just give us a little bit of background about yourselves before we start and just say hi to everyone, and then I'll start introducing our topic. Thank you. Christo, you can maybe go first.
I'm Christowitz. I have been involved with student administration systems for quite a while. I joined the University of Cape Town in 1982 and was responsible for the design and development of the student management system that ran there. After that, I joined a company called Integrated Tertiary Software, which was a provider of an integrated solution within the higher education space. I was a director of ITS until we sold it to a group called Adapt IT. And I retired from Adapt IT in 2017 as managing director of the education sector. Currently, Nico and I have a company called Afrique, as you can see from the logo, and we consult within the higher education space. Nico?
Jolene, yes, I'm Nico Jooste. I've been in higher education for as long as Christo. But I've been always on the other side. That means I've been the user of systems. I started my career in the late 70s at Fort Hare University, and interestingly, we then developed our own system on the backbone of a system that was developed by Rhodes University. And as it progressed, I then became an academic and was actually an historian, so I taught for many years. And then we started at Fort Hare, introduced Christo's product, ITS. And it was my pleasure to actually introduce the system to the university to make it work. And then later on, I helped, for those who know the South African system, might not know the university I'm talking about, called Vista. And Vista University, during the mergers in 2005, was actually closed and was integrated into other universities, but also trying to pick up their student system. And then later on, I was at the University of Port Elizabeth, the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, in the international office, running internationalization, and then also using student systems and advising on how do you actually bring new systems new uses to old systems. And that will probably be one of our discussions today, is how these systems have evolved to where they are and what would be needed. So my life was both academic and user of the system.
Thank you so much. I think that gives us a good idea that we are talking to two men who really know the SIS, the systems and have a lot of experience in throughout the different years, how it's changed as well. As you said, that's exactly one of the big things to tackle today. Is in the past, if I think about a student information system and the time that while I was studying, I would think it's something that sticks. It's in an administrative building and it's with the registrar, and that's where it ends. Everyone's information's on there, and when you go get your student card, it's normally through that system. So I think one of the big questions to ask is this still true for today? I mean, what is the biggest shift that we've seen from where this system was really just limited to maybe one department or one sector, or that's the perception that there is traditionally, and the way it was used, you had big server rooms where it was hosted maybe on site, and everything needed to stay secure there. How have these things changed in the education sector over the last, say, 5 to 10 years? And we can start with either of you. Yes, yeah.
Jolene, you're right. A student information system has always been an institution's core system. In the old days, it was a purely record-keeping system and normally facilitated the keeping of student record details as well as raising their fees. Now it should really help to accelerate growth, boost student success, and also improve the effectiveness of modern universities or colleges. In the old days, in most cases, the systems were really cumbersome. They were the universities, probably their oldest systems, and comprised old technology. Then what people did was there was a lot of third-party bolt-on applications to the old systems that you mentioned to try and make the systems more modern. Technology changes in recent years have allowed online access for students to register, to maintain their own details, and then also to allow academic and admin staff to access systems from anywhere, not just from their offices and so forth. New technology has also streamlined access processes via a smart technology and also provide now for many ways in which to communicate with students. Then came the COVID pandemic, which has really changed the whole landscape on its head. Lectures are taking place online. Assessments happen online, course material are distributed in different ways. Our postal service doesn't work so well anymore. And this has really put tremendous stress on institutions, staff, as well as onto students. So modern systems have to really respond to these challenges. Also, the nature of the offerings from institutions have changed. There are still the traditional under postgraduate certificates and degrees and so forth. But what seems to happen a lot now to generate third stream income for institutions is to do the upskilling and reskilling of people who have qualified before, but really need to adapt because of new technologies. A lot of jobs they were trained for don't exist anymore, and new ones have come about. And this covers everybody from blue-collar workers to professional workers. Some of the challenges that have come across now in this new normal are things like plagiarism, but there is software to help you assist with that. There's also now something that's in the papers often, and that's the fraud with assessments and examinations with these professional academic writers, as they're called, who will do work on behalf of students and they get paid for it, and hopefully one day not one of those doctors have to work on you. There's also the issue with virtual examinations, but there is proctoring software available now to try and assist with that. And then what I've seen with my daughter is that the institutions now have to provide them with mobile data so that they can do all their work online. So there have to be facilities to try and to facilitate that also. So a student system is not just a tool for students, but it's also a tool that academics now use to manage the student participation. So it's not just a tool to keep record of your student registration, but it's actually a management tool within an institution.
Nico, I could maybe ask you if you wanted to add anything. I think one of the big questions I have, if one of you wants to address it later, that is how does that actually differ from a learning management system? If there's an easy way to kind of differentiate between the two. Nico, I don't know if you had anything to add.
Christo mentioned, well, let's discuss actually quite comprehensively, but what I do want to say is, I recall when I was in the registrar's office, the student system was seen to be the tool for the administration. And the modern university, that has actually changed totally. That it's an integrated, comprehensive system that's used as much by academics than by the administration and students. So the use of it, and thus the management of the use of the system, has become much more complex, because the needs of academic administrators differs quite radically from that of academics, and of course from that of students. The learning management system, the LMS, is a different platform, but the critical part is the integration of the learning management system with the student information system. You know, the seamless integration of all of this, to me, is going to be the critical factor that would tell you whether it's a good system, or what Christo was saying is whether it's a system with a lot of add-ons, and you manage the add-ons to the best of your ability. I'm not saying the modern system shouldn't be able to accommodate add-ons. I think the whole notion of add-on is becoming more and more the way that businesses work. But a student information system must be designed in such a way that add-ons can be integrated seamlessly, and that it can adapt to some of the demands of the add-on. Because Christo would know, when his old company called ITS, Integrated Tertiary Software, the ITS meant the integration of all systems. That means finance, HR, library, and that into the student system. And the student system was the heart of the university, or still is. Now, if someone doesn't like a particular financial package, the challenge is not to force them to use the financial package, but the student system's challenge is, how do you integrate any system, any package seamlessly into your system, who must still be the driver of the university? And I know if people in the future are going to look at this, finance people won't like what I'm saying. A university is not driven by its finance system. A university should be driven by its student system. But because the integration is sometimes not that well done between the different systems, it then leads to that other systems looks like the driver. And I'm very passionate about making your student system the heart of the university's electronic management.
Makes a lot of sense. I think if I have a picture in my mind of how I would see it, it's almost like buying a Lego set and having that foundation there, and now you're buying other brands of building blocks that don't fit so nicely on. They fit, but you know, if you had to shake the structure, they fall apart. You almost have to super glue them. So you know, you try and find a set that has similar, that will work well, and that will have structure and will keep it full when you try and work through it. So, so it's very interesting. I think also interesting to think of it as a heart of your whole institution or university. I think if Christo spoke a lot about all the changes that are going on, I think a lot of people, that's quite a difficult part, I guess, of the SIS as well, is if everyone's involved, you've got so many voices and so many different departments and roles. And it's finding a way where everyone finds it user-friendly, even the students on that side and that interface. So it's not a very straightforward system, but when it works well, it obviously has great advantages for your institution. So Chris, I guess the next thing to move on to is to maybe look at, what do you look at? And I think Nico touched on some of it, but what do you look at when say an institution is now moving, they've realized, no, their system is so outdated, we can't actually add any more Lego blocks onto this thing, or name other name brands. How do they then sit and say, okay, we need a new system? Where do you start? Which are the questions you have to ask? And I know it's not straightforward, but you know, if there's a few tips you can give.
No, we discussed it, and we've drawn up quite a long list of things that we looked at, because Nico and I recently assisted in the choice of the system for a university, and really based on what we've learned over the years. Nico is correct. A fully integrated system, I think nowadays, is a given. And you can either buy it from one provider, or you can do what a lot of institutions now do, is look at best of breed in the various demographical areas that they work. So there's a good reason why somebody might not want to use your HR or your finance system, which is a South African developed system, because of the different tax regimes and HR requirements in other countries. So although we always advocated integration, it didn't make sense where people had other requirements. So then you really had to look at best of breed and a proper technology stack to integrate these things with one another in a seamless way, so that it doesn't fall apart, as you say, when there's a slight hiccup. The problem with a lot of these things is they need to run on the same technology stack, or a technology stack that will keep on working if, say, one of the building blocks is running on a later version than one of the oldest ones. So it's important that you look at the technology stack that meets your requirements. Also now, what is in the past, systems used to be based on premise. Then hosting came along, where you would have a system hosted at a big center, and everybody bought whatever they required. Then cloud-based systems became the norm, and this really needs to support the growth strategies across your actual institution. So if you're looking at the capabilities of a traditional enterprise solution, you now need something that will provide flexibility, that will meet your future growth initiatives and so forth. So first thing is underlying technology stack, and whether it's industry standard and it's proven. Is it cloud-based, and is it pure cloud-based, or is it just a system that's hosted somewhere and you access it through the internet? Also now, because of the different locations that these things are in, you really need to be careful of hacking. So you need to make sure that whatever you choose is secure and it meets the requirements in your country of operation. So in South Africa, we've got the POPI Act, and we need to make sure that we comply with all of those. Also very important is you need to look at your support infrastructure. What happens to your support after the initial implementation? Is there a local solid support infrastructure that you can rely on? Then, does the system that you are looking at, does it meet the expectations of your institution's strategic goals? Is it going to provide the growth possibilities that you look at? In our case, does it have student portal, academic portals for academic staff and admin staff? Is it intuitive and easy to navigate? Because obviously now with these in the cloud operations, you don't necessarily have a manual that you can refer to. So these things have to be user-friendly. Does it facilitate the delivery modes that is now the new normal? In other words, you might have class-based tuition, you will have online, pure online, you'll have mixed mode, you'll have competency-based criteria. Will it allow you to generate third stream income through corporate training that you provide, or adult basic education? Do all of those functionalities, are they catered for? I think also very important now with hacking and all of the other things that take place, you must have a very comprehensive audit facility with before and after images and all of those things. What Nico alluded to earlier, this needs to be a management tool. So you need to be able to track students that are at risk of dropping out or not performing. Does it have modern communication tools? I mean, most people are now using things like WhatsApp, but apparently that is now also not the flavor of the month. There are other things coming along. So whatever you choose needs to be flexible. You also want to be able to get usable statistics out of the system. So does it have comprehensive analytical tools that you could use? Does it meet the statutory requirements of the country in which you operate? So in the South African environment, we need to do HEMIS returns, but similarly, student funding comes from NSFAS. So do you have the ability to integrate your systems with that? And I think what's very important is what is included in the quoted price. Is it the vanilla system? Does it include the modifications to meet your RFP or RFQ? And something which I stress to a lot of people when they ask me what's the best system to choose, I would say to them, student systems are very much the same. You know, you have a student, you need to progress them, graduate them, and that's that. So it's important that you have a good, comfortable relationship with a vendor that you choose. So make your decision, but then also look at whether you're comfortable working with the supplier. Because remember, putting in a new student management system isn't an overnight exercise. It's a long-term exercise, and you are going to be tied to this vendor for at least 10 years going into the future. Other thing you need to look at is, how does product enhancement take place? Do you have a say in it? Is there a functioning user group which meets regularly, where enhancements are discussed and decided on? So it's really, do you have a say in any of these priorities or new strategies? And then last thing from me, Nico will have his own list, is also, does the vendor have a proven implementation record? Because you don't want, so you need to do your reference calls and things to make sure that you're tying up with the right bunch.
Thank you so much, Christo. I think from that list, it's very clear that you need someone that really knows what they're doing and understands the needs of the institution. I think one of the things you highlighted that stood out for me is also making sure it aligns with your institution's objectives and goals. I think it's something that shouldn't be forgotten. You know, you need to decide beforehand, what is it that you want to achieve and how will the system meet that need? But also you need someone like, with the advice that they would need to look at other things that they might not even think of. So I think that's out for me. Nico, from your side, I know that was quite an extensive list, but I'm sure you've got some.
Yeah. If you ask me as an institution, what would I look for? And I've implemented the systems at more than one institution, and it depends on who I am when you ask me what you look for. And I know I'm sitting in an IT environment, and I'm not an IT person. I'm an historian, but I was a registrar. And I'm telling you now, one of the biggest mistakes universities make is to only listen to the IT directors. They have a particular background, and therefore also they're looking at a particular outcome. I do think that in making a decision as an institution, you need to actually have a team that is put together, and it consists of a multiplicity of players who would be able to express their needs quite clearly. And when you go into talking to the particular vendor, that you have more than one voice at the table. The modern university has become a space of a collection of professionals. It's not that you have admin staff, and if we now look at the old university, you had the bursar, who was the person that did all the finances and actually controlled half of the university, and then you had the registrar, who was the one that looked at how the university ran, and that's it. Nowadays, you have your wellness people. There's a whole host of knowledge workers within a university. or a higher education institution, put it rather like that. And therefore, even if you're the vendor, make sure that you start talking to a team and not only one person, because in the end, the product is as strong as its users. You can have the best product. I speak of where I had to actually pick up the pieces. My experience, I would tell you that because universities implemented the system badly, they in the end started blaming the product, and it had nothing to do with the product. It had to do with themselves. So one thing that what Christo have also alluded to is, do you buy a off-the-shelf system? And if you do, then whether you're the buyer or the seller, you need to be clear that if you buy an off-the-shelf system, then you need to change your processes to suit the system. If you want me to adapt my system, your system, to my needs, there will be a cost to that and so forth. So that what Christo was saying is, be clear about the costs. But the bottom line for me is that, Jolene, we need to, as higher education institutions, exactly know that it's a complex environment we're moving into, and therefore the product that we're buying isn't a straightforward old, as Christo was calling it, a filing system, electronic filing system. It's a management system that manages a very complex environment, and therefore one must make sure that you understand the complexities and build it into your understanding as a team.
Sure. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from both of you is, yes, the complexity, and then the role players, and I think that stands out quite a lot as well. As you've got so many different people involved, and a team will help. But I'm sure that within that, you still have a lot of people who are set in their ways, who do things a certain way, and this impacts the way they do things. And do you have any tips? I mean, this is not an easy thing to tackle, I'm sure, but any tips of how you get stakeholders to work together towards actually wanting to use? I mean, you can have the system, like you said, Nico, and if no one uses it properly, or and they just carry on doing things the way they've always been doing it, then there's actually no use having this you know, beautiful system.
Yeah.
So you know, what tips, or out of your experience, if there's, I mean, it's not, as I said, it's not something that's easy and straightforward, but any tips you can highlight maybe of what you would suggest for stakeholders and how you get to work together?
For this question, I'm going to go first, because Christo have been the one that had to install it in many places. I've only had 2 experiences where it was installed, but I'm going to look at, just give you a tip from what I do think is one of the best practices. And there's not a South African university. South African universities, I think, have done the same, but it was a Belgium university that installed a brand new system. And they actually gave this whole project a name, the Anemoon project. And they actually pulled out of the institution the team players who would in the future run the project. They took them out of their job environment, gave them for a year out, whether they were in the library or in the student system or wherever. They took them out. They built a team with people that were flexible and that knew how the new system would benefit the institution. And they made them the implementation team, whilst others were carrying on with the normal work, because it wasn't, they didn't double up. That means the person had to do their day job and implement the system. And then after 18 months, they switched off the old system, and this new team moved in and started to run the system. And it's one of the better run systems that I've seen in universities. So Christo would say to you, and if you do it properly, it changes the environment completely. Whether it's off the shelf or a newly built system doesn't matter. And what you were saying is, how do you address those strategic blockers that sits in different spaces? I think for me, a best practice is to have an implementation team, take people out of their jobs, go through a whole process to say, well, for the next 5 years, you are going to run this new system. That would be my advice.
I can put it, I have exactly the same advice, Nico, as you've said, but I can put it slightly differently. I think for those of you who've been involved in changing systems, it's a traumatic experience for all involved, because you're taking out of your comfort zone. So I think it's important that you choose people for this team you mentioned, Nico, that are willing and able to do the job.
Yeah.
Not the most senior people, because they are normally stayed in their old ways. So take people who are willing and able and give them the task to do it. Very importantly is, don't second people to assist with the project, but to also have a day job, because neither of those two functions get performed properly. So take people out of second people, or take people that can do the job, appoint new people into their positions. So you need to take the people that you can least afford to be without and make them responsible for the new system. But they also have to be senior enough to be able to take decisions and on the fly, and not have this convoluted chain of approvals that you have to go through. So it's important that you have your structure set out before the start of the project, and not try and fill the gaps on the fly. Otherwise, you're heading for a problem.
It sounds to me like the reality is you won't ever be able to please everyone. And I think it's knowing that from the start. And if you get a good set of leaders that actually help implement the system, and they lead the way by example, hopefully, you know, that will ease the process. And if it's functioning well, others will start using it as well. You know, realizing that if they don't use it, then, you know, they're not able to complete their work properly. You know, if it's implemented and it's there, then they have to use it. So I think it's probably not very straightforward, but it does make sense, you know, to try and find the best middle ground in that process. So yeah, thank you very much. I mean, this is a long conversation already. I think I'm going to start tying it up and just maybe ask you for a few last inputs on, you know, anything you wanted to add as a last thought to today's conversation, maybe about the student information system in the 2020s that we're in. Any last words from your side? Nico, maybe, or Christo, you want to start?
Nico, go.
You can go.
No, I think I've said it before, and I want to reiterate it, that the higher education space has become a complex environment, and we must not fool ourselves by thinking it's going to be easier in the future. I think it's going to become even more difficult. Just one example, for instance, that I think the university of the future are not going to be in one place. The university of the future would probably allow students to accumulate credits from all over the world and bring them into a space and ask them for a qualification. So the student system must be able to actually not only work in different spaces, but accommodate different systems and an understanding of different systems in such a space. So it's a huge challenge, but it's a very interesting challenge. I don't think Christo and myself are going to sit and worry about these challenges in the future, but it is one of those things that I really think is exciting for companies to just think about. What is the known-knowns about the changes in the future? And identify also the unknown knowns that would make a system a usable system that would be able to make a university effective and efficient.
Yeah, I think from my side, you know, students are the lifeblood of an institution. So a modern student management system should really cater for their diverse needs. These needs are changing rapidly, especially in the times that we're living in now. So to meet all of these changes, and if an institution wants to remain relevant and at the forefront of the academic landscape, they need systems to assist them to manage their processes.
I think what I'm hearing is embrace the future. Don't be scared of it, and be aware of the changes happening fast. And we should all be adaptable. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm sure would like to chat to you in the future again. There's so much more we could talk about. But thank you for your time today, and you must have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jolene, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.